Hello, this is Nyla Goldberg from Functional Endocrinology. I'm a medical provider as well as health coach. Today we're going to talk about root causes. One of the important root causes is toxicity. There is acute toxicity and chronic toxicity. And acute toxicity is a very robust presentation. People will frequently know that there is a food poisoning or some kind of poisoning that usually occurs within 24 hours of exposure, but it could be delayed up to 14 days. But there are as well chronic toxicities. Those are usually much lower concentration and much more indolent. How do we get exposed to different toxins? And what are the effects of toxins on your body? So there's a body of literature showing that different heavy metals can interfere with our functioning. Aluminum accumulation, for example, can be affecting brain and can be one of the causes of Alzheimer's disease. Iron accumulation in tissues can create diabetes, low testosterone, congestive heart failure, as part of hemochromatosis. There is copper accumulation like we see in Wilson disease, where people end up with neurological and psychiatric changes in their body, plus other problems. Many other toxicities like lead toxicity create peripheral neuropathy, anemia, and so on. We have endocrine disruptors, for example, lots of chemicals act on testosterone production. Many of chemical we call xenoestrogens interfere with fertility, increase breast cancer. There are some endocrine disruptors that look to your body like thyroid hormone, but in reality they're not, and because of that they will interfere with thyroid function. There are lots of endocrine disruptors that affecting your body weight and cause weight gain. Of course, you know about carcinogens, chemicals that can cause cancer, and teratogens, that chemicals that can cause change in formation of fetus. And those are many more, plus many more toxic effects on the body. How do we get exposed? We can get inhalation, breathing, direct contact through skin, ingestion when you swallow something, and ophthalmic. Even through eyes, you can get exposure to different chemicals. There is a thing called toxic load, and depending how heavy toxic load in the air, in the water, in the food, we have a lot of toxic load from all of those. And compared to, for example, 17th century, when the cities didn't have as many factories, the toxic load much increased by 18th century and 19th century. And actually, even though right now number of factories is more, we are working on reducing of toxic loads because people realize that toxins are very dangerous for us, and therefore we are all trying to eliminate the, air pollution and water contamination and so on. Still, we have a lot of toxins coming to us through food, through the pesticides, herbicides, glyphosides. There is a lot of them in personal care products, medications, artificial materials like implants, pins, joints, and so on. There is as well environmental, like toxic mold. We do all get exposed to different hobbies, and my food crafter friends told me not once that it's quite toxic and you have to have special protective gear when you do that. I personally painting and do resin, and I know that with resin I have to have protective gear, otherwise I get headaches and other immediate symptoms. The other sources You have to be careful where you live and know what's around the house you live. There are a lot of patients I see who have, maybe not themselves, they don't farm, but they live near to farms. And therefore, farms near them, if they're not practicing organic farming, everybody gets exposed to different types of chemicals. Old houses like lead, asbestos, wood burning heaters, again, mold exposure, cleaning supplies, cosmetics, furniture with fire retardants. At work, there are lots of different chemicals depending on where you work. And there are other toxins, which electromagnetic and even noise toxicity. Those are important to recognize and remove as much as possible. Not going to spend too much time on heavy metals, but I feel or explain that frequently heavy metals, they are like pegs in a machinery, and they clog up machinery, and therefore your machinery do not work well. They could take place of proper minerals that's supposed to be there, but because they're not exactly the same, they may not allow the enzymatic function. Plus, they can create support different biofilms in our guts, and therefore it interferes with your gut absorption and many other things, and so on, so on, so on. You probably have heard a lot about endocrine disruptors, so here's the list. You can look into that and read more and try to avoid the plastics in your foods. And preferably you want to use glass containers or stainless steel for your storage of food and for water and so on. So evaluation, how do we know if there is any kind of exposure? The blood level is best for acute exposure, but 24-hour urine is best for chronic exposure. You can get something called porphyrins, and porphyrins, there is a special condition called porphyria, which is very rare. It will have certain set of porphyrins, but a lot more frequently we will see disruption of porphyrins related to different chemicals. So that's one of the things I order when I'm looking for different toxicities. You can get urine toxic, an essential test from doctor's data that will show 38 elements. There are different hair analysis with NutriEval. It's 8-hour urine and blood from Genova. It will show you certain versions of heavy metals. The Great Plains has a test for 173 environmental pollutants using 18 different metabolites from one single urine sample. So obviously it sounds like awesome test. Lymphocytes, you actually can check that from Great Plains. I do like mycotoxin test because it shows it can help me explain previously unexplainable symptoms in patients, and you can do that through Great Plains and real-time lab. The NutriEval from Genova, for example, this is an example of a Krebs cell cycle, and you can see that in red small circles there are different names of different heavy metals that can interfere with certain pathways. So that is another way how to look into toxicities. And if you don't have energy production, if you don't have well-functioning Krebs cycle, you cannot form energy properly. And because of that, you may end up with fatigue. So evaluation of this type of Krebs cycle, amino acid testing helps us to understand mitochondrial function, neurotransmitter, and can help us to understand if there is possibility of heavy metal toxins that may interfere with that metabolism. As well, it helps us to understand oxidative stress and even digestive markers. So, oops. Okay. So we'll skip the this stuff. It's interesting. So factors that detoxification pathways. So detox pathways are technically, we have your toxic exposure, for example, drugs or pesticides or even food. It gets into your body, and usually phase one takes place in the liver, and your liver is making fat soluble toxins into water soluble, and then phase two will phase two will make it water soluble, and after phase two it will take you to elimination, and elimination happens through urine, through sweat, and through feces. So there are several different genes. On the right side you can see there's a liver genes that helps liver to work better, and you can see that different genes are responsible for processing of different chemicals: estrogen, polyaromatic hydrocarbons, CYP1-2A is metabolism of caffeine, cymbalta, Wellbutrin, aflatoxin, and more. And for example, if you have gene mutation that slows down your metabolism of caffeine, then if you're a slow metabolizer, then it's hard for you to drink more than 1 cup of coffee because you will feel caffeinated for hours and hours. But if you are a fast metabolizer of caffeine, then you could have probably 5-6 cups of coffee a day, and you can drink it before going to bed, and you still will be well, and you will be able to go to sleep because your body will be able to chop up that caffeine very quickly. You can see CYP2C9 affects warfarin, and warfarin is one of the blood thinners, and it will affect how much of warfarin you need. So if you know your genetic mutations, you will know what dose to start with. CYP2C19, it's metabolism of Plavix, which is blood thinner. Again, apparently about 30% of people who take Plavix don't benefit from it because they have this gene mutation that makes this Plavix useless, and you need to have different version of the medication that works the same way. So this genetic pharmacogenomics becomes very important, not only for detoxification of toxins, but detoxification of our medication and how those medications work in you, and are they going to be effective at current doses or not. So detoxification. So what do we need to do if we got exposure? Let's say you have mold exposure. First, you want to have removal of the toxin. Number two, you want to bind everything in your body, and we'll talk a little bit more about binders. Number three, you want to increase elimination and support your phase one and phase two nutritionally, and I'll show you what could be done there. Then support phase three of elimination. So you want to work on your gastrointestinal health, because having good health guts will help good bowel movements and elimination through that pathway. Then you want to drink plenty of water, at least 6 to 8 cups a day, more if you are working outside during hot summer or working somewhere where it's hot and so on. So it's technically solution by dilution. We want to dilute our toxins and eliminate them through kidneys. Other pathway is elimination through sweating. So having a regular exercise will be great. Doing sauna and infrared sauna and sweating is a great pathway for elimination. Infrared sauna is apparently superior to conventional sauna because it reaches deeper into the body, into the skin, increase circulation in the blood vessels, and therefore it helps to release many of chemicals stored in the body fat. There are different versions of infrared sauna. Many of them are not very expensive. You may choose to look into saunas that produce less EMF, which is electromagnetic field, and that may be one of the things you choose when you consider when you're choosing these infrared sauna. Binders. There are different binders, and binders do exactly what it says. They bind the chemical, and then natural way through gastrointestinal system, they move that toxin away. There are several different versions of clay, and zeolite is one of them. It's apparently very good for mold, mycotoxins, and mercury removal. There is a bentonite clay that removes mycotoxins, and depending on which mycotoxins it could remove, you could prefer one binder or the other binder. Diatomaceous earth. Diatomaceous earth, it's technically used for many things in agriculture. Actually, same as bentonite clay and zeolite, they all could be used in agriculture, in raising chickens and other stock. Mycotoxins affect animals very significantly because a lot of feed is affected by mycotoxins. So when you mix in zeolite, bentonite clay, diatomaceous earth into feed, that helps those chickens or other livestock to be less affected by those mycotoxins and grow better. So there is a lot more research on a PubMed about use of this for veterinarian rather than for human research. But it's still research is there, and it shows that all the bentonite or all the clays, versions of clays, and diatomaceous earth is very beneficial. Chlorella. Chlorella is ancient algae that binds to heavy metals as well as mycotoxins. Modified citrus pectin binds efficiently to lead and some other heavy metals. And when lead is present in the system, it can prevent the removal and excretion of other metals in spite of properly functioning detox mechanism. So it is obviously is number one priority to remove lead and then remove other metals. Activated charcoal. Charcoal has been used for centuries, probably, or at least for a couple centuries, in helping with different poisoning, and it has highest capacity for many things, and it's broad spectrum and very effective for different chemical toxins. Humic and fulvic acids. They're potent binders for glyphosate detoxification. Plus, I know it's part of the protocol for Epstein-Barr virus, could be used for that. And in general, you could choose to use that as part of your binders. Silica. Silica is the most effective binder for removing of aluminum from the body. And we talked that aluminum is one of the chemicals that can be a culprit for certain versions of Alzheimer's disease. So based on everything I read, it appears to be as a good idea to have low amount of binders, small amount of binders taken on chronic basis. The only reminder there, you want to take them apart from your medications and apart from food, because they will bind everything from your food and medications and will render those ineffective. I noticed that some people who have high toxic load, if you give them high amount of binders, they may not feel good because those toxic elements become drawn out of the body and create almost acute toxicity. So if you know that there is a chronic high load of toxins, it may be better to use small amount of binders and increasingly higher amount of binders and do it gradually. But if you don't know, you can start with regular dose and just see how you feel. If you feel worse, then go down on amount. There are several commercially available binders that I use for my patients, like universal binder from Quicksilver. I learned today that Design for Health has a binder, Charcoal Plus, and it has, I do believe, zeolite and modified citrus. No, it has chlorella and possibly a couple other agents. So yeah, there are different commercially available binders that you can use, and some people just go with diatomaceous earth, but some kind of binder appears to be a good idea in our toxic world. So what is our nutritional support? You can see here that our phase 1 nutritional support is different vitamins and glutathione, B2, B3, B6, folate, and folic acid versus methylated folate will depend if you have MTHFR gene mutation, and B12, again, regular B12, methylated adenocobalamin or hydroxycobalamin. There are different versions of that, and depending on your genetic mutations, you may choose one or the other, or you may even tolerate one or the other. Different branch chain amino acids, flavonoids, phospholipids, those are going to support your phase 1. So let's say if you support your phase 1 but didn't support phase 2 and phase 3 elimination from your body, what's going to happen? You will have a lot of toxins from going from fat soluble to less fat soluble, but then they are going to be stuck in that intermediate stage. So you want usually to support your elimination from body. Make sure that you have good pathways to get rid of the, you drink plenty of water, your kidneys work well, your bowel movements are regular, you're prepared to have exercises or have infrared sauna. Start with that. Then support your phase 2 with N-acetylcysteine, glycine, taurine, glutamine, cysteine, methionine, different amino acids. You support your intermediate stage, and after that, you go to support your phase 1. That way, everything will be floating seamlessly and will be getting rid of, your body will be getting rid of those toxins. You've heard me multiple times to talk about glutathione, which is very strong antioxidant, and its precursor is N-acetylcysteine. Glutathione is one of the most common molecules used by your body to eliminate toxic chemicals. It could be given together with B vitamins and IV. I started recently providing IV to my patients, and Myers cocktail with glutathione IV after does wonders for a lot of people, helps people to have better energy and feel better. Interestingly enough, first 24 hours is not always better. People may actually feel a little bit worse, probably because we do activate that phase 1. But after that, people start feeling better. For some people, you may choose to have different version of chelation for heavy metals, and there are special ones for specifically for iron or for copper, but for many other ones, there are chelation like DMSO, EDTA, and so on, but that's in a sense separate talk by itself. And that's it for today. Let me stop recording.